Hello YouTube, and welcome to a brand new lore video. Today we're gonna talk about one of the Dwemer's greatest mage crafters, Kagrenac. This video came after quite a couple of requests that followed my video on Kagrenac, the last living Dwemer, and considering I told you there that Kagrenac is a topic for his own video, well, no time like the present, right? Anyway, I recommend watching last week's video on the Red Mountain before this one, as that one talks a bit more about details of the larger context of which Kagrenac is part, and I don't want to repeat myself too often in videos, as that's just, I don't know, counterproductive. So please watch this video before you watch this one if you want to get the full context, and if you don't need it, well, let's talk about Kagrenac now. As I said in the intro, Kagrenac was the Dwemer's chief tonal architect, or highest and most skilled mage crafter of the first era. This tonal architecture thing is a subject for its own video, but very basically tonal architecture is a type of reality manipulation that the Dwemer invented. It makes use of sounds to alter reality. Why this all works the way it does, I won't go over in this video, as it's very complicated and very metaphysical, but using this tonal architecture the Dwemer have been able to achieve things otherwise deemed impossible. Like for example the enslavement of the Falmer by altering their minds, or the construction of their very own brass god, the Numidium. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's get back to Kagrenac. Kagrenac was the greatest of all Dwemer tonal architects, and used tonal architecture to work on great projects together with his underlings. He personally led groups of tonal architects, among whom was Kagrenac, on whom I did a video some time ago. These teams of tonal architects all worked on different projects, but were all led by Kagrenac himself. While his most famous project of his last years would become the Numidium, or the brass god, there were other projects that his teams undertook. For example, his teams of tonal architects created the moon and star ring worn by Imperial and made it so that only he or a legitimate incarnation of him could wear it, making it so that a legitimate incarnation could be recognized by being able to wear the moon and star ring, as we can see in Morrowind. Kagrenac held great veneration among the Dwemer as a high craft lord, and his teachings were studied all across the Dwemer lands on Tamriel. And thus, when the Dwemer found the heart of Lorkhan on the Red Mountain during one of their mining operations, it was Kagrenac who took the first steps in researching the heart of Lorkhan, who eventually started to plan experiments on the heart, with the eventual goal of giving the Dwemer as a race immortality or divine powers by creating their own artificial god, the Numidium. Some sources imply that Kagrenac worked on all of this in secret without the knowledge or approval of Dwemer, the Dwemer king, making it so that Dwemer denied the Dwemer were working on the heart of Lorkhan when the Khmer leader Imperial asked him about it. But of course, as I said before, Kagrenac was working the heart, and whether or not Dwemer knew of it when he denied it to Imperial mattered little in the end, as when Imperial found out through Dagot he broke the alliance of the First Council and spurred the Khmer armies into a war with the Dwemer armies to try and stop the Dwemer from experimenting with the heart of Lorkhan. At this time of open war, Kagrenac did not really make a secret of his ambitions to make the Dwemer race divine by working the heart and making his god. He and his underlings wrote several books explaining his theories, like for example the books Divine Metaphysics and The Egg of Time. But even though his theories seemed solid, the Dwemer as a race and other tonal architects not under Kagrenac's rule were far from unified on the theories. While many believed that Kagrenac and his theories were right, others didn't, which sparked a huge debate within the Dwemer society on whether or not the heart should even be worked, and if it were to be worked, and how to go about it if you had to work it. As any experiment of this kind could always have unforeseen consequences, as many tonal architects warned Kagrenac about. However, despite all of this public debate, Kagrenac just continued on, as meanwhile parallel to his experiments, the war with the Khmer also carried on. He and his tonal architects managed to create 3 tools that would be needed to work the heart in order to activate the Numidium, which they were also quickly building around the heart. The 3 tools are the legendary tools Keening, Sunder and Raidguard. The tools Keening and Sunder were meant to actively work the heart, while the gauntlet Raidguard was meant to protect the person working the heart from the immense power of the tools, as without that gauntlet the person would perish, as the tools were simply too powerful to be held with their bare hands. As the war continued on between the Dwemer and the Chimer, it became ever more apparent that the Chimer were starting to win the war and that the Dwemer wouldn't be able to turn the tide anymore, as they had simply been weakened by too much infighting and former rebellions over the many years before the war. When the fighting reached the Red Mountain, it said that Kagrenac decided to work the heart of Lorkhan in an attempt to activate the Numidium as a last-ditch effort to win the war. What exactly this last-ditch effort did, we don't really know, since it resulted in a dragon break, a situation where time is essentially broken and multiple outcomes are equally true. What we do know, however, is that the Dwemer all disappeared after this. Not just the ones at Red Mountain, not just the ones fighting for Kagrenac, not just Kagrenac, but all of the Dwemer. Even in Skyrim and Hammerfell, which were quite far away from Red Mountain. What happened to them is still a mystery. It could be that the Dwemer in Kagrenac's act managed to get divinity and were transported somewhere else, outside of time. It could be that they were all erased from existence, and honestly we just don't know what happened. Yagrum is the only living Dwemer to have survived all this, since he was in another realm at the time, which was unaffected by this act. And by his and most other people's guess, this was probably not Kagrenac's intended outcome, meaning that either his critics were right and that there would be unexpected consequences, or he carried out the experiment prematurely in the confusion of the war, not taking the necessary time to prepare the act well. Whichever of those it is, his actions resulted in the disappearance of the Dwemer race, their cities abandoned and slowly falling to ruins over the centuries. Their legacy is great, but it was cut short by the actions of one of their most venerated craftsmen. So, while that was a good summary of Kagrenac's influence on history as a whole, you need to know that we don't know all too much about Kagrenac as a person, what he was like or what he looked like. While many of his personality traits we can make educated guesses on, we have absolutely no idea what his looks were, so that's why I mainly used some Morrowind Dwemer concept art that was used for the Dwemer statues in that game. Now, in terms of personality, we know that he was a great planner and a meticulous worker, and that he worked with integrity, as he would always record every little step and detail of his experiments and planning everything very much in advance. He was venerated as one of the, if not the greatest craftsmen and tonal architects of the time, and we can assume that he had a bit of a complex where he just assumed that he was always right, which according to Yagrum he usually was. But this meant that he wasn't very open to criticism, as we can also see in his actions during the whole Numidium process, where he carries on stubbornly despite there being other researchers warning for unforeseen and even disastrous consequences that were possible to happen if the heart were to be worked. And even supposedly he lied to his own king about the experiments, as he only knew what would be right himself, and the king's opinion wouldn't really matter, or we just not inform the king so that this will all be easier. Like, he just assumed that he was always right. At least that's the idea that I'm getting of all this. In addition to that, we know nothing of his early life either. My personal guess would be that he probably started out as a young talent among the tonal architects, working in groups like the ones he was heading in his later life, and then slowly rising in prestige until he eventually led his own groups, and until he eventually became the greatest of them all. But that's just speculation, as we literally just know nothing about him in his past. And that was basically the story of Kagrenac, the Dwemer's greatest tonal architect, whose actions would likely be the cause for their disappearance. As one tiny little footnote is that while everybody, including Yagrum, the last living Dwemer, basically assumes that Kagrenac's actions were the reason for the Dwemer's disappearance, it could also be that Kagrenac worked the heart, causing for the dragon break and the Numidium's activation, but that the Dwemer were actually punished by the gods or something like that by erasing them from existence, if such a thing is even possible. Like, there seems to be correlation, but that doesn't have to mean that there's causation. Like, it seems that the two things are related, and they most likely are, but we have no definitive proof whether Kagrenac's actions actually resulted in the disappearance of the Dwemer. I personally believe that his actions did, but I'm not sure, and whatever I'm telling you doesn't have to be always have to be the truth. That said, if you like this video, consider sticking around until next Thursday when a new Elder Scrolls lore video arises on the channel. And before I end this, allow me to thank my top patrons, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Mr. Metalud1v1, Mr. Gabriel Binda, Mr. Christmas and Mr. Para. These guys, along with the others on screen, make my weekly lore series possible. And that said, a final little update. As of late, I've been extremely busy with work, university and other stuff. This makes it so that I have had less time to work on videos, and more ambitious videos on more obscure topics, like for example the languages of Tamriel, food, slurs and insults or whatever, those kind of things. The things that most of you really enjoy, but they take a lot more time to research than general topics, and those kind of things take way longer now that I'm a lot more busy in real life. And even for regular videos, I tend to go through a bit of stress to get them done every Thursday. Like, if you watch this video the moment it comes out, as some of you do, because you click the bell icon, chances are that I was still editing this video about an hour before it aired, and that I recorded it either the previous day or even somewhere on Thursday, because I simply don't have a lot of time anymore. So that's why in the coming weeks I may move my upload date to Friday, as that would give me a teeny tiny bit of extra breathing space between work and university, giving me a bit more time to get it done. I hope you understand. I don't hope that when I switch to Fridays people suddenly start stopping watching the channel, but I held the poll on the channel on whether I should do Friday or Monday, and more than half of the people were in favor of the Friday. So not sure when I'm gonna switch upload dates. It's probably coming in the coming weeks. Hope you don't mind. Still gonna do the whole weekly lore videos thing, but Thursdays is just a bit exhausting for me. So yeah, it's gonna be Fridays. That's it. Zork out. See you next week. Bye.